general thing about your mom's car, but it turned out to be a kind of a special car.
Is that wood on the side there?
It's a 50.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, now, I don't know if it's for anybody else, but when we go live, so if you come through this door, so if you come to the back,
I'll be safe.
up here is where it's,
Thank you.
we're live, so
I appreciate that. Thank you.
just so you know.
Thank you for that.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get one.
So we'll be live.
We are, I'm gonna start at noon, even though we don't start the presentation. Just let somebody see kind of the preamble, and we'll go from there. But I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Shows
A number of people. Probably do 30 seconds.
I don't know if he really cared or it was like too hard to see that car so tricked out, so beautiful.
That was not coffee. I'm not a coffee person anymore. It's really interesting. I go to a restaurant or something like that.
Hey, welcome, Jenna. Actually, we're using new technology here, so we're starting a little early so we can test it out. I'm actually talking to Jenna right now on Facebook Live. So yeah, I'm looking at myself because the camera's down there, and we're using a Mevo. Remember we talked about that? I actually got my hands on one of those. So we're gonna see how that works today. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get started with the group. I don't need to hold my phone to see myself. I just want to make sure I was in frame for the Facebook Live, and we'll get started in a second. So anybody here for the very first time? I don't think so. I think I have. Well, we do have one. Yeah. And what's your name and how'd you hear about us? He doesn't speak?
My daughter. She wants to go ice skating.
She doesn't speak?
Well,
her cheeks turn red. I see that. I have, I got to tell you though. What's her name?
Sydney.
Sydney. I have to admit to you, I have 4 daughters, and they've all long since realized that it's my job to make sure they're properly embarrassed in every situation. Cindy, that is a dad's job, and so even though I'm not your dad, I am a dad, so I'll make sure we call on you quite frequently. Yeah, it is transferable. My daughters will be very proud that I've transferred that to you for the day. Okay, so nobody's here for the first time except for Sydney. For those on Facebook Live, Sydney is here. So if you want, maybe we'll show her in the crowd at some point. So, so you can show your friends. You can forward this. This is on the Business Growth Network. And so we're glad you could be here. But before we get started, we're gonna do, normally we don't start Facebook Live until the trainer comes online, but I'm testing the technology, and Jenna's online, so we can decide if we like how we like this and so on. I don't know. I set it down. I assume I'm in frame, so we'll deal with it. I'm not that important. So for those who are here, since everybody's here, I'm going to suspend the preamble about don't spam and don't, and how you remember. Everybody just get out your dollar, pass it to the end. I'm not going to ask you to pay me $300. I'm not going to do any of that kind of stuff. But everybody should have an updated roster. I know we didn't have them on Wednesday. Should have an updated roster. All I'm going to tell you is, even though you've been here all the time, make sure your information is correct. Make sure it's actually on here if you haven't been here for a bit. If anything changes, make sure you get it to Mark. Mark will update it, and so on. Any questions about the normal housekeeping stuff? Because I'm going to give you guys your, normally on Fridays we just do my name is, and here's my company or whatever. I'm going to actually give you a 30-second, quick 30-second advertisement while I play with the technology and go around, and then and you can applaud. So, but just keep it to 30 seconds or less, okay? So we'll start here. Just go around the table, and Mark, and then I'll end up, and then I'll introduce Todd, and we'll get started, okay? Shoot.
Good morning, happy Friday, everybody. I'm Seth Williams, a realtor here in Dallas, Texas. So just a little fact about the market right now is we're expecting a 7% increase this year in 2017. They put out the statistics about 2.5 weeks ago, and it was interesting to see. So if you know someone, or if you yourself are looking for an investment property or a home, now is the time to do it, because if you think you're going to save money, you're not. You'll just pay more. So yeah, Seth and I with Keller Williams. Thanks.
Thank you, Seth.
Linda with Persona Marketing, and I sell promotional items. That's anything you can put a logo on, from clothing to widgets, literally. Also known as tchotchkes. If you need that perfect tchotchke to keep your company name in your potential client's hands 24/7, I can help you find it. I'm Linda with Persona Marketing.
What's your persona?
I'm Mark Dietrich with We Offer Wellness, representing Mevo as a wellness company. I don't want to bring us down, but I was thinking about how it's so important for us to take care of ourselves. I mentioned it Wednesday about this gap between our birth and our death. I had two brothers, younger, who kind of poo-pooed what I was doing 25 years ago with no. They're both gone now. Unrelated illnesses. Didn't take care of themselves. No. I think we need to take a look at another look at.
I'm John. I'm with Intervention Social Legal Shield. We offer hope and opportunity and the ability to access an attorney for unlimited issues at a price that everybody can afford. We also have a premier identity theft product in the marketplace, and looking for people that want to either die, they have teenage drivers or act like a crazy teenager, or people that want to make some more money. And I'm John Moore with Legal.
Thanks, John.
Patrick Garcia, agent with Neurokinesis. We're a Fortune 100 company. A lot of people think that all we do is life insurance. We actually do a little bit more. We do estate planning, financial planning, and we've been around for about 171 years. Ideal customer is baby boomers, people who are looking into creating their own retirement plans. So I appreciate your time, Patrick Garcia.
And Pain Relief Therapy. I help people with advanced manual therapy techniques get out of physical pain, get back into their life. Referral are people who been told they're going to have surgery. They don't want to have surgery. They're tired of taking opiates, pain meds, which actually changes your nervous system. All the techniques I use are designed to work with the nervous system first. Bottom line, you've got to do that. Looking for referrals to nurse managers or office managers that see patients. Bring in pain relief therapy, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live in.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Karen Burkholder Insurance Agency. I'm an independent agent, and my agency is independent, so which means I work for my clients. I don't work for the carriers. The carriers have to prove themselves to me for me to put you with them. And one of the things that I am working on this week is living benefits with your life insurance. If your life insurance policy does not include living benefits, please come see me and I'll get you taken care of to make sure if anything in your last few years of life with chronic or critical illness, your life insurance policy should be able to take care of that. Karen Burkholder Insurance Agency.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lloyd Dobson, independent associate with Stream Energy, and I help people to attain two things: those being time and financial freedom. And I use and mentoring them through the process of turning residential commercial energy into residual income that looks like anywhere between $50 to $500 a month. I'm here today specifically to look for people who'd like to save money on their mobile phone services or energy services. So if you know someone like that and would like to learn how to do that, please write their name and number on the back of your card and send it to me. Thank you.
Ryan Hilton, Whistle Plain Car Care, Auto Detailing and Headlight Restoration on Motor Company Unit, home office. As usual, I'm looking for dirty, ugly, smelly cars.
Jeannie Rourke with Miriam International, and I'm looking for people that want to look good and feel good when they're working. It's an anti-aging company, and we are going into health and wellness in the next month or by the end of the year. Glad to meet everyone.
Keith, you wanna?
I'm Todd Thomas, a realtor, and live in Brooklyn.
We're actually at 30 seconds, but that's good.
That's all right.
Actually, I have a testimony. This is from John Thurston. Got 4 or 5 calls this week from Global Tech Services wanting access to bring my computer software up to date. Got on about 6 of those last month. I tell them they should be ashamed of themselves to get a real job and hang up. You might want to warn about this company in our networks. So, thank you for listening. I'm Mark Weber, Weber's Computer Services. I'm the guy you can trust to come out and do what needs to be done, not these people that call out of the blue.
All right. Let me get back up here. Hopefully get the. I'm gonna be looking at my phone here for a second again. We'll figure this technology out. It's actually, you can do it as a one-man show, but I've got a. Okay, so this is a good place to stand. Okay. All right, welcome everybody, and again, my name is Dave Roberts. My business is Roberts High Performance. I'm a business connector. My tagline is "We connect the dots." If you really want to understand what that means, we probably need to have a one-on-one and get to know you a little bit. Or if you're part of the Business Growth Network, or would like to be, if you go to businessgrowthnetwork.org, you can kind of see some of the output, some of the things I do. What we do as a vision challenge is on there, and that's kind of the template for what I do on a one-to-one basis, but it's offered to everybody. So anyway, feel free to check that out. Okay, so today we have our educational training by Todd Thomas, and Todd has a very illustrious background. He's done a lot of speaking, a lot of educating, works with military, ex-military, and everybody. So we have an awesome opportunity, and so I would ask you to I'm going to let Todd, because I probably wouldn't do it justice, I'm going to let him give you a little bit of his background, and then for the next 30 minutes or so, you're going to hear what he has to share with us. And again, Todd, appreciate you joining us, and I'll try to make the technology work for you.
All right.
Come on over this way.
Okay.
And let's get started.
Well, first, anytime I come to one of these, I try to write down everybody's name. It doesn't mean I remember it, but I do make it. Well, okay, I'll get a little bit more over there. Seth, Linda, Mark, John, Patrick, Ann?
Ray Ann.
Ray Ann. Okay, Ray Ann. I had Ann or Deanne as a question mark. I didn't get your name on the end, sir.
Keith.
Keith. And the young lady that's your guest?
My daughter, Sydney.
Sydney. All right, Sydney. All right.
Everybody knows Sydney.
Keith. So we got Keith, Karen, Lloyd, Ryan? Okay, I want to sure you said Ryan or Brian.
David.
Mark, and David, and Jeannie. All right, so did I get everybody?
I think so.
This is really, today is a fun day because for a number of reasons. It's Friday. And I'm getting to do 3 of the most fun things that I enjoy doing in this life. 1, sharing my message. 2, watching my son play baseball, which is where I'm going right after this one. He's got a game at 2 o'clock, so I'll be jetting over there to watch my son play baseball, one of my favorite things to do in this world. And 3, spending time with my wife later this evening. So, my name is Todd Thomas. I was supposed to be here last week, and I thank you guys and David for making an adjustment. For the last several months, I've been working with a company called Prolympia International, and I've been training to do a special PTSD intervention. That's not what I'm here to talk about today. I just want to tell you about it. That's why I wasn't here last week. There was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all day, all 3 days, and I had to be there. I really needed to be there for that training, for my certification, for the special intervention that I do, helping people that have PTSD symptoms. And then we were able to move it to today, so thank you very much, David. Now, a lot of people ask me, how did you get into where you're doing? We're going to talk about confidence today. How did you kind of get into that? Well, it goes back to the early 80s when I was playing baseball. I'm a baseball guy. We're a baseball family. My oldest son's played baseball and college baseball, and my youngest now is coming up. He'll play college baseball somewhere. But I was playing what back then in the early 80s we called semi-pro baseball. We made a little bit of money, but believe me, not very much. Not very much. Today they call it independent league baseball. But one thing I figured out was that I was okay. I was an okay player. But I figured out that I was better at coaching and helping my teammates be better than I was at actually playing the game myself. So when I wasn't playing, I was helping coach them and help them with their mental approach and help them with their hitting. That was my specialty. I'm a professional hitting instructor for baseball and softball players also. And so that led to, well, I ended up getting married and I started having boys. I do have a daughter. She's my youngest. She's a kind of a girly girl, so that's okay. I like the break. I like going to dance recitals once in a while instead of baseball games too. Well, I started having boys, and they're all athletically inclined, and they all took to baseball very well. And so I started coaching for free. And next thing you know, I've got their teammates and people coming to me. And after a while, around 2006, I said, I'm going to start charging for this. And so I did. So I started charging for it. And I've been teaching mainly hitting for quite some time. And what I figured out over a period of time was I was creating what I call a lot of batting cage all-stars. They could do it in the batting cage, and they were fantastic. But when they stepped between the white lines, where it really matters, some of them were just absolutely mental train wrecks. And that bothered me as their coach. I want them to succeed. So if they can do it in the batting cage, but they can't do it on the field, where's the disconnect? They obviously can do it. If this is where you are and this is where you want to go, what's in between is what's usually what's stopping you. And that's what I figured out with these players is that, you know what, they're suffering mentally. So I dove head first into not only educating myself about it and reading everything I could get my hands on, but then started teaching it as well. Successfully, I had some players that were just absolute train wrecks that turned into solid performers. And I thought, you know what? As good as I am at teaching the mechanics and stuff, I like this part better. And when I meet with a player for the first time, guess what? The very first thing I tell them is, what's the number one thing to being a good hitter? Yeah, you got to have good mechanics. That's number 3. Timing is number 2. What is the number one thing if you have the ability to do it?
Mental game.
Confidence. Confidence. Confidence is the number one thing. And confidence is an interesting thing. We'll talk a lot about that today. But what I want you to do is I want you to imagine with me for a moment that you just booked a very important meeting. You just set a meeting that could make your year, maybe even your career. And when you first set this meeting, you felt fully confident. You felt, this is great. But then as the clock ticks and it's closer to the meeting, that little voice inside your head starts telling you, are you sure you're good enough for this? What if they don't want what you have? Or believe that you're the right person for the opportunity? And so when you first set the meeting, your confidence was super high, and then now you feel like, as it's getting close, your confidence is tanked. Well, the good news is that if you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. You're not alone. A lot of people have felt that way. And what I do in my confidence coaching is I help people to get over those dealing with fear and negative thoughts and be able to still do the things that are important to them in spite of what they're feeling. Okay, so we'll come back to confidence specifically in a minute, but I'd like to share with you, if it's okay with you guys, why I'm so passionate about that.
Okay.
One is, a lot of people, they look at me and they see me speak and do this and that, and they think that it's always been easy for me. And that isn't the case. That isn't the case at all. Actually, for most of my adult life, I've really felt like a failure. My brain would tell me, it was like a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week radio station pointing out all my flaws, faults, and failures. Anybody else have any of those? Well, my brain was famous for pointing them out to me, especially when I get into a challenging situation. As I learned to deal with that, it was tough at times. And we went through some tough times with my family. And many times I would look at myself in the mirror with disgust and say, what have you ever done? Awesome kids. I had praise from the people, the players that I advertised, that people just come to me from word of mouth. So I had to be doing something right, but I didn't feel good about it for whatever reason. I think my lowest moment really was that I felt like, when I came to the point where I felt like I wasn't setting a good example for my kids. I wanted to make them proud of me. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think so. When it came to my confidence, I was concerned that I wanted to show my kids that their dad was capable of doing something that was significant. And, at times in our lives we get help where sometimes we least expect it. I was at a meeting and this young lady, I read this story that I wrote and it was a big hit, and this young lady came around to me during the break and she said, and I kind of paused for a second, and then I thanked her. I thanked her for her kind words. I sat back down. And for about the next hour, I think there was a speaker, but I don't know if I heard the word he said. My mind was just absolutely racing. I thought, you know what? I've heard that kind of praise before. But this time it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like all of the pain and the angst that I was feeling about not being good enough dissipated. And I thought, you know what? There are other people out there that are like, they don't think well of themselves in a lot of situations. Not all, but in the situations that are important to them. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to write a book about it. And I did. I call it the It Factor Action Guide. The It Factor Action Guide. Now it says the secrets of having it and using it to the fullest. I say it's the secrets to kicking your it in gear. So it boils down to confidence. Well, confidence is an interesting thing, because I think all of us in this room would think, I'm confident. I'm confident about a lot of different things. And we are. Mm-hmm. But we all lack confidence in certain areas too, don't we? If y'all wouldn't mind, take one and pass it down. Well, let me get a couple first. Over here. David.
Yep. Mark.
So we'll have some fill-in-the-blank stuff there. When you think about confidence, confidence has essentially two definitions. Now, there's the intuitive one that, if we don't know specifically how Webster defines confidence, it is how it defines it in one way, but it's the one that we kind of think of. And that is a feeling of certainty or assurance. A feeling. Confidence. I feel confident. A feeling of certainty or assurance. And that's nice to have, isn't it? It's nice to feel certain and assured about something. Mm-hmm. We don't always feel that way, do we, when we step into a challenging situation? Then there's the other definition of confidence, a little bit more little known, but I think more important, and that is an act of trust or reliance. So you have a feeling of certainty or assurance, and y'all can write this down if you like. A feeling of certainty or assurance, an act of trust or reliance. So you got the feelings of confidence, and you have the actions of confidence. Okay? And we'll come back to that in a minute. So we're all confident about various things. I mean, I'm sure you're perfectly confident in your ability to use a knife and fork to eat steak. To walk up and down a flight of stairs. When you walk out here and you get in your car, are you confident in your ability to operate it safely?
Yeah.
Forget about everybody else out there, all the crazy drivers. So you're confident in those things. But there's areas of our lives that we're not so confident. I have zero confidence whatsoever in my ability to scuba dive down 150 feet. Probably 50 feet, really. But guess what? I don't care. It's not important to me. I'm not a scuba diver. So why do I care whether I'm confident in doing it? So in the first blank there, a confidence breakthrough may be needed if lack of confidence affects something that is important to you. If lack of confidence affects something that's important to you, well then yeah, you might need a confidence breakthrough there. Like for me, if I was not confident in standing up in front of a group and promoting my book and my message and getting coaching clients, that would be a problem. I might need a confidence breakthrough. Maybe I joined Toastmasters, which I was a member of for quite some time. So I call this the secrets to captivating confidence and 3 costly mistakes that may keep you from mastering the confidence game. So now we've kind of talked about confidence and defined it a little bit. Let's get to the 3 costly mistakes. And we'll go kind of backwards from 3, 2, and 1 being the biggest costly mistake. Down the letter E right now. Excessive E. I'll tell you in a minute what the E stands for. But let me ask you a question. Do you have wanting more? Excessive E. The E stands for expectations. Excessive expectations. You perfectionism. Anybody fight the tendency to have to feel like you got to be perfect at things? Mm-hmm. Here's the good news. I'm the bearer of good news today. The good news is our mind is naturally wired that way, to strive towards perfection. Now, we can't ever achieve that, can we? And let me ask you, I don't have it on the, I need to add this to my sheet, but I already had these all printed out, so I didn't want to print out some more.
I don't want to.
Ink, paper, I'm trying to be
eco-friendly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trying to make it an eco-friendly presentation. But I think about this one. I was telling Jeannie here that I study neuroscience. I tell people frequently that if I would go back to when I was a kid and start over again, I think that's what I would want to be. I love it. I love the study of the brain and how it works and the mind. I'm constantly reading and studying about neuroscience. And I was listening to a neuroscientist while I was driving one day. I was driving out to Graham. Wow. I was driving to Graham, and I was listening to these myths, brain myths exposed by neuroscience. Really interesting stuff. And she said something that made me think about my presentation about perfection. Perfection is, I think you ought to write this down. In fact, perfection is the absence of blank. How am I doing time-wise?
You got about 15 more minutes.
Okay. Perfection is the absence of blank. Now, I had never thought of it this way before, and I have a sneaky suspicion maybe you guys haven't either. So I'm going to share this with you, and I want to see how powerful you think this is. Perfection is the absence of potential. Now think about that one for a minute.
Right.
If you woke up tomorrow morning and realized you had no more room for growth, you could not possibly be better at what you're doing. Is that a place you really want to be? No, I don't think so.
Right.
I like what my my son's college baseball coach used to say, let's try to be 1% better today. 1% better. Well, if you're capped, if you're already perfect, there is no room for improvement. There's no more potential. You've used it all up. I think that would be a terrible place to be. And so when you think about perfection and how you struggle with it in your life, think about the fact that, you know what, I don't really want to be perfect. What I just want to be is better. I want to improve. You know, perfect, stay with me for this for a second, because initially, at first, when you first hear it, you might think, I don't know if I agree with that. Perfection does not exist. In our world, okay, as we see it, and in ourselves, it does not exist. That's what I mean. There is no perfect rainbow or sunset, even though they're stunningly beautiful. There is no perfect. So what we need to do is learn how to disconnect from those perfectionist thoughts and tendencies to try to have to be perfect all the time. I dealt with when I was writing my book. I felt like every page had to be perfect from the very first draft. It was incredibly frustrating at times. So excessive expectations, also known as perfectionism. Perfection is the absence of potential. Okay, so we'll move on to number 2. Costly mistake number 2 is fixation with F. Kind of like these letter things. Mess with you a little bit. Fixation with F. I won't hold you back for long. It's preoccupation or fixation with fear. Fear. Fear is an interesting thing too. Often demonized in our world, you know, as what holds us back and all that kind of thing. But right, the false evidence appearing real thing. There's some legitimacy to that, but is it, if I'm at the zoo and a tiger walks around the corner, is that false evidence appearing real? You know, I might want to take it seriously and run. Okay, so it's interesting. When we're young, we're taught to think about fear as a sign of weakness. What do we hear when we're kids? You're scared that there's something in the closet, or there's a monster under your bed, and your big brother says, "Don't be stupid. There's no such thing as monsters. Grow up. Quit being a wimpy baby." Well, the message that we get is that fear, or being fearful or afraid, is a sign of weakness or something completely unnecessary, and that's not true. I mean, we're built with fear as I guarantee you, fear has probably saved your life numerous times throughout your life. You know, so some of the myths are: 1, that fear is a sign of weakness. Fear is what impairs performance, and fear is what holds you back. Now, it's not fear that holds you back. It's your attitude towards the fear. That's what holds you back, not the fear itself. Because here's an interesting thing. There's another one that you can write in. Confidence is not the absence of fear. Right. Neither is courage, by the way. And when you think of courage, I was listening to a guy on the radio one time, kind of self-help guru type, and he mentioned that he was fearless. And I was thinking, I don't think so. Because if you were fearless, could you ever, or would you ever have the opportunity to display courage? No. How could you be courageous if you're not afraid of anything? Right. So courage is, and confidence is not the absence of fear. So what I say is confidence is not the absence of fear. It's a revolutionized relationship with it. See, top performers learn to accept their fear and channel it into their performance. And we get back to those 2 definitions of confidence. The feelings of confidence, nice if we feel that way. But how about the actions of confidence, an act of trust or reliance? Doing what's important to you in spite of what you're thinking or feeling. Now that's a powerful psychological skill. And what I tell my players is the actions of confidence come first, and the feelings of confidence come later. Now it may be the other way around sometimes, but as in baseball and softball, I don't know how many baseball fans kind of follow or know how difficult it is to play that game and how fearful it is when you're stepping into the batter's box and there's the pitcher, and it's 9 guys against you, and all eyes are on you. How are you going to? You're a factor all the time with them. Confidence come first. What you need to do is walk to the plate like you own the plate. But if you don't show it, if you'll have the actions and look like a confident hitter, then the feelings of confidence. Let's keep moving because I don't want to run all. Player, the bigger player. Lots that we have. I struggled big time with this. And remember, I used to, when I was going through my struggles with. Are you sure you're ready for this? Those thoughts that we have from time to time. Necessarily want them. It's interesting too to you think about possible, if not impossible at all, to ever really be able to suppress it and not think about it for years and years and years. But I guarantee you, there's in each that you probably hadn't thought of in 30 years. Mary had a little 30 years ago, 20. Maybe you have, kids or grandkids, and maybe it's more recent. However, you see there, those thoughts are there. You never can really get rid of them. But what we want to do is learn how do we deal with those caustic self-judgments when they come back on us. And when we step out of our comfort zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Whenever you step out of your comfort zone and you're fear, but more than likely have some thoughts. Okay? So, caustic self-judgments. Learning how to disconnect is a powerful psychological skill. Thoughts is a powerful psychological skill. How do I do that? About what you think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how, when those thoughts come back, you have. You ever notice that your brain seems to have a mind of its own?
Mm-hmm.
Where it delivers those things up to you when you least expect it or at least want them. Disconnect from their thoughts is to kind of see them really for really.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. If imagine the thought that good at X, or I'm just no good at this. It changes the entire way you react to it. So you go from I am no good to you just changed a word. All it changed is a word, and now you laugh. Pictures in your head. It's how are you buying into them? Are you letting them define who you are and how you behave? Are you letting them define who you are and how you behave? Or are you still doing the things that are most important to you, regardless of what you're definition of true confidence? To be able to still take the actions of confidence, even though you may in the situation. And it's because you stepped out of your comfort zone. And that's the only way to really grow it.
Self-talk?
Yes, self-talk is good, and I have some in my book about that. I don't buy into what happens is a lot of times, like I tell my kids, if you just go telling yourself, I'm a good hitter, your brain's gonna be saying, no, you're not. Remember yesterday you're 0 for 5? One of the most powerful things that we've been given in this life is the power to choose. It may be the most powerful thing that we have at our disposal. Our power. I mean, just think about the world right now. I mean, people believe some crazy things.
Right.
But for them, it's true in a manner of speaking because they believe it. And so, and that is, I say, I choose to believe I'm a good hitter. I don't care if I was 0 for 5 yesterday. What's my brain? I choose to believe rather than just I am, because a lot of times it causes you to get in an argument with your brain over whether you really are good or not. So as we're kind of winding down, I know I'm getting close. I thought I'd go ahead and kind of wrap it up with that, but leave it open for some questions or comments.
I don't really have just a comment.
Yes, sir.
A lot of people are afraid of being afraid, or and I try to tell people, fear is your friend.
Yes.
It loves you, it wants to keep you safe. That's
Exactly.
why you run away or you fight, because of fear. So don't think of fear as a negative. It's a positive thing. It's there for you. It loves you. So you should learn to love it.
Right. Yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, there's no doubt that fear has saved our lives at some point. You know, I'm not getting close to the edge of that.
And
you know.
You triggered several things. I was just listening to a blog today, and this guy was talking about capturing the thoughts of your mind. Pretty much what you're saying. And, you know, when you have all these negative thoughts, you take it and you change it, or you say, no, I refuse that thought. I don't want to have that thought. It's not a welcoming thought. I'm going to replace it with something else.
And my point is that it's in there. And you're not getting rid of it.
Right.
Here's a real quick story. There's an old Zen proverb. By the way, I don't want to go on that way necessarily, just to say that that's biblical too, taking our thoughts captive. Yeah. But there's an old Zen proverb where a novice monk was looking for the greatest Zen master in all the world, and he goes to his head monk in the monastery and says, "How can I find the greatest Zen master in all of the land?" And the head monk says to the novice, "Find the person that tells you that they've eliminated all negative thoughts, and you'll know that's not the person you're looking for." So they're in there. It's how you deal with them when they come on you.
Right.
Now, all of you guys are professionals and probably some of the best in your areas of expertise, and confidence in that area and those areas probably isn't a challenge for you. Maybe there's another area, or maybe you know someone that, you know what, man, so I'm thinking somebody needs to hear this, or I would point them Todd's direction for at least a talk. I do what I call confidence breakthrough sessions. My website is todd-thomas.com. So don't forget the dash. Somebody else on toddthomas.com. Turns out it's a fairly common name. You know, some famous. I mean, if you put Todd Thomas in, some guy that's a designer or something comes up. But I think I do come up on the first page. So yeah, todd-thomas.com. Any questions on what we talked about today?
So how about as far as, you know, when you talk about because the negative self-talk, and, you know, we're constantly programming our brain one way or another is, you know, not only saying I choose to believe this,
Right.
but I find that my brain's always fighting with itself. And so I kind of say that's an area that I'm really focusing on improving.
Yes.
And I'm improving all the time. And I'm not talking about where I am or where I've come, but where I'm going with regard to that. And my mind has trouble arguing with that. You know.
I talk about this in my book, but and I'm going to tell you, this is a little technique that I teach everybody really, but a lot of times the kids really love it. A way to separate themselves from their you just see it like a picture on a wall. I'm no good. Okay, whatever.
That's fine.
Gets you down or holds you back. Take that thought and repeat or sing it to happy birthday or something. I do Yoda. I like to do Yoda. So like, no good at this you are. Now don't do it. And we should. And that's kind of the point. When you take that thought and you put it in some other context of a cartoon voice or singing it to the theme of happy birthday, you realize, oh, well. You and your thoughts. And I do not have to identify with that.
Sounds to me that's how you disconnect, disassociate.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Is taking that negative thought.
You said something that the action phrase that I've heard it a lot of times. Act as if. You will be.
Yes.
So, you know,
I don't really believe in fake it till you make it.
I don't either.
It's
But
just
act as if.
act it as you become it.
Yeah.
If you're taking action in the face of fear or negative action steps, and that's no fake.
Yeah.
Great.
How much is your book?
It's
Cool.
so if you want to come and ask me questions, feel free.
Yeah, it's fake it till you make it. You know, the funny thing is, even by as if, because frankly, your mind's smart enough to know, and in fact, if you pretend you're something you're not, and actually that gets into or network marketing, and that's one of the things that they tell. It's not where you are. It's really gets back. And then focus on that. That's where your focus. Have perfection, as Todd said, and thinking, okay, why didn't I do that as well as I wanted? Why didn't I say what I wanted to say? Getting better. And rather than focusing on what I didn't do in this moment, I'm focused on what. So Todd, that was excellent. I
Thank you very
really
much.
appreciate your, and I really appreciate way we'll improve that. I like the Mevo kind of we got a few minutes, so we'll do some.
You said.
Yeah.
thank you for.
Thank you, Todd. Nice. Yes, sir.
There is a way. Get the details and post to the website.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Cindy, did you have anything? You know, just, you know, you maybe. Yeah, there you go. Keith?
So yeah, Jake's, that's what we're doing.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, I should watch that again.
Remember that movie? All those different things.
Abigail?
Maybe I'll watch that with my wife tonight.
There you go.
It's on her show.
Thank you for. Actually, read the book about it.
Mark?
Website after we had our little mixer on Wednesday.
Thanks for those who are speaking. Next week we have George Henley will be speaking for us. Others here? Okay, she referred me to George. George is kind of the website, so that'll be awesome. Thank you, Ryan, for cleaning my car. It's dirty now. I don't know what rain, but other than that, no, I think actually, if you haven't had him detail a lot of people in and out of my cars, and so I kept telling him, you know, when the timing's right, and that I'm working a project until the end of June with, and did it right in but yeah, it looked like new. It looked, still inside looks pretty much nice. Thanks for the legal shield. I got my will updated. That's awesome. Thing is actually going, and actually we're looking at potentially doing that for some other people. And anyway, Mark, always thanks for your leadership and your efforts on the
This week.
we all have multiple full-time jobs, right? And the thing is,
Yeah.
when this is when networking is but when networking is nobody should feel beat themselves up or whatever if you can't make the meeting. Part of why we do the training, we do it. There's something that he said you can do that. So next week we have our Wednesday. And John mentioned the women's thing. Any other announcements, general announcements?
First car last weekend.
Oh man, I would never do that to him.
Well, I needed it, and he did a wonderful job.
Oh yeah, the headlight thing, if you've got the oxidation, that's a very but I didn't see him until the last minute when they were driving. Headlights, and I can't even imagine they could see. Yeah, right.
I not to spend it, I was at the stoplight, and I looked over to this guy's car, and I could see the oxidized headlights, and the only reason my exhaust was like, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I got up when the light turned green, and we started going. I was in the middle lane, he was over here. Lane with a shopping cart.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
and all I stood and I looked to the right hand lane, all of a sudden I heard this tire screech and I was waiting to hear the body.
Because he couldn't see.
You know, he really didn't.
Yeah, but the other thing is, and I know you said that before, the other thing is you can't see them. I mean, mine are okay, but you can't see people that have it, so you don't. And I appreciate everybody that's been here, and this is a good group for Friday, and any other things that we missed, Mark? Did we collect the dollars?
Not yet.
Okay, they're over here. Great, you guys have a great week, and again, Todd, let me thank you again for giving.